Three stories. I'm here to tell you just three stories today. So sit back, relax, just hear me out. I'm here to share with you three stories from my life to illustrate how diversity and inclusion can be your team's superpower. It's not just a great corporate metrics to track or a cool thing to say around or even the right thing to do. But I'm here to make a case that it also makes good business sense. You see, we human beings, research shows that we are deeply suspicious of each other. And we're deeply suspicious of people who don't look like us. And that trait has actually kept us alive through the Stone Ages. We are also hardwired to divide the world into us and them. So in light of these hard facts, what I'm here to tell you is diversity and inclusion is not something which comes naturally to us. It is a learned trait based on evidence, results, and research. So my three stories would illustrate that diversity and inclusion actually makes sense. So with that, a little bit about me. I was a deep sea diver and a fighter pilot in the Navy. My name is Sarvana Pat Bhava, and I've lived and traveled in over 30 countries in my life, and I promise I'm getting to my three stories. With that, my first story. I want to explain why I feel that diverse teams perform at a high level. You see, I grew up in India in a small family of 5 with really humble means. When I was just 10 years old, my dad came to me and said one day that I've been selected to attend this elite boarding school on scholarship in the foothills of the Himalayas. It was more than 2,000 miles away from my small, sleepy town where we lived in the southernmost tip of India. After 4 days of journey by train, when my dad dropped me off in this school on the 14th of January, 1984, things couldn't have been more jarringly different. It was freezing cold. I didn't speak a word of the language, eat the same food. I even looked like the kids there. I struggled to fit in and make friends. I still remember crying myself to sleep in those early days and feeling terribly homesick. But what I did not know then was that this 100-year-old school had learned and perfected the concept of diversity and inclusion. And they did it not because it was cool or required of them, that they learned that it produced the best outcome for their students. You see, this school selected 25 students, one from each of the 25 schools in 25 states in India, and schooled them with the best resources available to them. And by the time we graduated high school, we had learned much more from each other's individual experiences than what any collective curriculum could have ever taught us. In the graduating class of 25 students, 24 students by the time we graduated, we spoke 14 different languages, practiced 5 religions, and we came from diverse ethnic, socioeconomic backgrounds. Tolerance, empathy, and acceptance of each other's differences were something ingrained in us, and we made friends for life. And it's no surprise that when the alumni from those schools were asked as to what was their turning point or what could they attribute to their success, they unanimously attributed to their unique life experiences they had in the formative years in their life. As a 17-year-old graduating high school, I still remember the uncanny confidence I had to take on the world. And that was the first time I had this experience of a superpower within me. So I know from my unique schooling experience that diverse teams perform better. My second story, I would want to illustrate as to why I think that inclusivity makes teams more innovative. A few years after graduating college, I joined the Indian Navy. As a young 24-year-old lieutenant in the Navy, I was second in command of a troop-carrying ship which specialized in beaching operations. You know, the kind of ships you probably saw in these black and white newsreels landing troops on D-Day in Normandy, right? So we routinely practiced beaching operations in remote, far-flung islands in the Indian Ocean. These were highly elaborate battle exercises involving dozens of aircraft and ships, costing the taxpayers millions of dollars, hundreds of millions, in fact. On board my ship, there was this one, among 40 other sailors who I had on board my ship, there was one particular sailor who really stood out. He had always trouble conforming. He always ran foul with the law. He had trouble following orders, and he didn't like to do what was told. In short, he did not fit in a traditional construct expected of a sailor, a square peg in a round hole. Let's call him Leading Seaman Kumar. Leading Seaman Kumar's expulsion from the Navy on disciplinary grounds was imminent. In fact, it was scheduled for the day after we returned to Baseport after this beaching operations. Now, fast forward to this day of beaching operations. We had to practice offload a contingent of Army personnel in this remote island and then load them back on the ship and get them back. Everything was running on schedule. 12 ships beached in formation, perfect weather. We offloaded our cargo of an entire infantry battalion along with their troops and tanks and the equipment. Just as we were boarding them back on board, a rogue wave toppled one of the trucks. Now, this threw a wrench in an otherwise flawless operation. Every man on each of those 12 ships was laser focused on recovering the truck so we can all head home because we had spent weeks at sea for that exercise. Every tool and every technique laid out in our standard operating procedure of the Navy was proving unsuccessful to retrieve the truck, which is now getting bogged down deeper because the waves are beating on it constantly. In the middle of all this chaos, my crew chief runs up to me in the ship's bridge and screaming at me, saying that Leading Seaman Kumar just commandeered one of the speedboats and was heading towards the beach, and he swiped a case of beer bottle from the ship's bar. Let me say that again. In the middle of all the chaos, Leading Seaman Kumar decided to swipe a case of beer bottles, took a speedboat heading to the beach. Holding back my rage, I decided to focus on the problem at hand, which is to recover the truck, and then deal with Leading Seaman Kumar later. About 10 minutes after that, from the clearing in the forest beyond the beach, I could clearly see the silhouette of two elephants emerge with the handler walking beside those elephants. And conspicuously, I could see through my binocular that dangling on the shoulder of the elephant handler was a case of beer bottles. And not too far behind them was Leading Seaman Kumar walking and directing the procession towards the toppled truck. Within minutes, the elephants made quick work of dislodging the truck, loading them back on the ship. The day was saved. You see, as we were all as professionals, we have focused on the problem at hand, which is to retrieve the truck, and putting ourselves in the confines of a traditional expectations of the Navy. Leading Seaman Kumar thought differently. He thought to use the elephants which were being employed in logging operations on that island to save us on a tricky situation. A misfit who was days from being expelled actually saved the Navy millions of dollars on that one day because of his out-of-the-box thinking. That is the only surviving photograph I have of the day. Unluckily, the elephants were not in the frame, and that's the day of the picture that's the truck in question. So what he taught that day was inclusivity kindles innovation in teams. With that, I'll get to my third story. I immigrated to the United States in 2006. And I had built and sold a few different businesses. Just I had sold my chain of restaurants in March of 2013. I told my wife, I want to take a few months off to figure out what I wanted to do next. As I was just a few weeks later, I was just settling down to becoming a couch potato. My wife scolded me, saying the least I can do at home to be helpful around the house was to go pick up my daughter from home. sorry, from school. Um, so I thought to myself, how hard can this be, right? Put my Netflix on pause, jumped in my car, and as I pulled up into my daughter's school at about 3 p.m., I wasn't prepared to see the chaos unfolding there. Hundreds of cars, school buses, trucks, snaking the neighborhood, teachers with walkie-talkies and clipboards screaming orders at parents in the car line, kids with backpacks running helter-skelter in corridors, just aimlessly walking around. Out of 40 minutes of watching the chaos go by, I come to the head of the line. And by the time the teacher opens the car door and puts a kid in my car and waves me away, and as I was pulling out, I turned around to ask my daughter how her day was, and to my horror, I saw this white kid sitting in the back of my car. And equally shocked looking at me. And every day since then, for the last 8 years, have been dedicated into figuring out what went wrong that day. The oh shit moment actually became meaningful as I dug deeper. You see, 99% of the schools today use no technology while they deal with arrival and dismissal of children when the safety is at risk. What I also learned is that the technologies which is needed to keep the kids safe in today's construct are expensive security cameras, number plate readers, RFID cards, and all hardware-centric devices, which really adds up in cost. And so what I also realized is the zip code where the school is the determinant factor which dictates whether the schools have the funds to deploy in school safety or not, which was a very sad discovery for me to make. And 99% of the other schools which could not have the funds, they use teachers and principals to their own devices to fill in the gaps in technology, leading to a lot of stress and breakpoints, and serious breakpoints around school safety. What I also learned was unless we lower the cost of technology and reduce barriers to adoption, school safety will still be accessible by just a few schools who live in specific zip codes. So what we also felt is that the tools we use today to manage our children in schools are not inclusive. And to make it inclusive, you have to break down the barriers of cost, then you can adopt then the adoption may grow. So from the onset, we had a clear dictate. At Pick My Kid, we pioneered the concept of geofenced dismissal automation with zero requirements to buy any hardware. And we delivered the software via the cloud, making it extremely affordable to every school in America and across the globe. And as a reflection of that, breaking down the barriers of adoption, with just one school 6 years ago, we are now in all 50 states and 7 countries outside the US with over 2 million users and growing rapidly by the day. We managed to democratize school safety by breaking down the traditional construct of how expensive and how the technology should work, and created equitable technologies, and we delivered tangible results which can really save lives. And that's what we did with Pick My Kid. So what I realized working in that is that solving for inequalities actually made for perfect business sense. As I gave you these 3 stories today in my life, what I realized is diversity and inclusion is not just a nice to have, but it is absolute must in today's hyper-competitive environment for any team to thrive and succeed. Don't take it from me. Research has proven time and again that diversity and inclusion is a key business strategy which is essential ingredient in every successful team. It does increase productivity and it does increase innovativeness within teams. Research also proves that when we are different, we work extra hard to communicate and clarify ourselves better, leading to better communication, leading to better outcomes. We've also seen that diverse teams tend to have more contradictions and contrarian opinions, But what has been established is this contrarian opinion is what makes your decision-making process more robust and resilient to change. And therefore, every diverse and inclusive team ends up being more successful than a homogeneous one, as per the research. So in conclusion, I would leave you with this thought, which I fundamentally believe in, is that when a group of diverse, unassimilated people come to work in statistically significant numbers every single day, we can bring about tangible change in our communities and leave the world a better place for our kids. Thank you very much.